I had barely stepped out of the ride share in front of my grandfather's porch in Asheville when the door swung open and his voice cut through the crisp mountain air. "Why did you come by taxi? What happened to the Subaru we gave you for your birthday?" He asked it slowly, like he was trying to assemble a picture that didn't match the pieces he remembered. I opened my mouth, ready to explain why a car that was supposed to be my work lifeline had somehow slipped out of my life. But before a single word could find its way out, a voice behind him, too bright, too polished, answered for me. And in that instance, on his doorstep, everything began to quietly come undone. My name's Elena, and most days I smell like varnish and cedar because I run a tiny handmade ornament studio out of a rented workspace in Raleigh. It's not glamorous. The floor creaks, the windows fog in winter, and stray glitter clings to me like a shadow. But it is mine. Every hand-painted birdhouse, every snow globe I assemble, every name I ink onto polished wood, it all feels like the closest thing I've ever had to actual solid ground. People say I'm patient. They don't understand the truth behind that. I'm not patient, I'm cautious. I learned early that if you keep your voice soft and your steps careful, people leave you alone enough to work. And work has always been the one place where I didn't feel like an inconvenience. My family would describe me differently. My mother, Denise, likes to call me the responsible one, which in our house means the person who never says no. If something broke, I fixed it. If a bill appeared, I covered it. If my younger sister Harper needed anything for her influencer ambitions, lighting, travel, visibility, ad support, my mother decided I should contribute. "You're the older sister," she would say, as if birth order were a lifelong financial contract. Harper is 23, magnetic, camera-ready, and treated like the family's rising star. My mother calls her our public-facing child, which is a strange thing to say unless you've become comfortable living like your household is a marketing campaign. My father, Mitchell, stays quiet through it all. He loves us, I think, but he treats conflict the way some people treat bees. Freeze, don't swat, hope it goes away. When my mother speaks, he folds. The only person who ever saw me without asking for something was my grandfather. He's the reason I had the Subaru in the first place. Years ago, when my small weekend market table turned into a real business, he told me, "If you're going to haul your work all over the city, you need a car that won't fall apart on you." He ignored all the flashy models and chose a sturdy used SUV with a deep trunk and brakes he trusted. He handed me the keys without ceremony, as if it were the easiest decision in the world. My mother smiled for the photo she insisted we take. Later she said, "We'll keep it in the family," which in her language meant the boundaries between what belonged to me and what belonged to them would always blur, to their benefit. So when Grandpa asked about the car on his porch, confusion tightening his brow, every uncomfortable memory from the past year rose up like a warning bell. I should have realized then that something irreversible was already in motion. Before I could answer him, my mother stepped into the doorway, her voice bright and casual, smoothing her blouse like she had been waiting for a cue. "She doesn't have the Subaru anymore," she said lightly. "Harper's using it now. It makes more sense that way." The words hit the air with the sharpness of a dropped pin. I blinked once, twice, as if my mind needed more time than usual to process what she had just declared. Grandpa didn't move. His hand stayed on the doorknob, knuckles whitening. Behind him, I could see the dining room, my family frozen mid-motion. Harper stood near the table, a ring light glowing behind her like a halo she had rehearsed. She lifted her straw and took a sip from her oversized cup. "It's just practical," she chirped. "I've got meetings all over town, and you barely use it. I mean, you're mostly in your studio. I'm constantly on the go." My throat tightened. "Mom," I whispered, but the word felt weightless. Denise laughed softly, the kind of laugh designed to soften the edge of something deeply unfair. "Sweetheart, you hardly drive. You're always tucked away in that workshop. Harper needs mobility for her brand deals, collaborations. It's smart." Of course, it made sense to her. Everything did when it benefited her. My mind raced. How many times had Harper asked to borrow the car for just the weekend? How many times had my mother handed her the keys before I finished answering? How many times had my own requests to deliver orders, to pick up materials, been met with sighs and reminders that I could just take an Uber since it was a business write-off? I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. I told myself it was temporary. But temporary had quietly solidified into their new version of normal. Grandpa's gaze shifted back to me, slow, questioning, searching. "Is that true?" he asked. My breath caught, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wasn't used to being asked for my truth. Silence had always been the easiest path in our house. Harper set her glass down with a practiced clink. "Honestly, Elena, if you managed your time better, this wouldn't even be weird. I'm the one who needs mobility right now." There it was, the effortless dismissal. The minimization packaged as logic. Something inside me pulled tight. A thin, trembling thread of anger, quiet but steady. It wasn't dramatic. It was a small, smoldering center of heat that felt new and ancient at the same time. Grandpa pressed his lips together, eyes still locked on mine, as if he could feel the shift happening in me. That silent recognition, just from him, felt like a match struck in a dark place. He stepped aside and let me in, but the warmth of the house didn't reach me. I walked through the dining room like a ghost passing through a version of my own life I barely recognized anymore. Dinner moved on around me. I nodded when necessary. I chewed without tasting. My mother talked about Harper's upcoming partnerships. My father murmured agreement in a low, unsure hum. Only Grandpa watched me, really watched me. That night, driving back to Raleigh in another rideshare because Harper had taken the Subaru again, I sat with my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I didn't cry, not yet. The tears waited behind my ribs like they needed permission. When I unlocked my studio, the cold rushed at me. I didn't bother turning on all the lights, just the small one above my workbench. Its warm glow felt honest in a way my family hadn't in years. I sank to the floor, leaning against boxes of unshipped orders, breathing in varnish and cedar. The first tear slipped, then another, until I couldn't tell whether I was crying for the car or for everything I'd carried long before it. I don't know how long I cried. Long enough for the heater to click off, long enough for my hands to numb. When the tears finally dried, something subtle had shifted inside me. A sharp, clear awareness. I opened my laptop, pulled up my accounts. At first, the numbers blurred, then they sharpened. Payments for family promotion, bills I didn't authorize, transfers labeled temporary help, purchases Harper made during live streams, deliveries I never received, line after line, month after month, year after year. I added everything twice because I couldn't believe it the first time. Nearly $10,000. Money that should have kept my studio stable. Money that should have been mine. I sat in the cold, the truth ringing through me with painful precision. I wasn't unreliable. I wasn't careless. I wasn't failing. I was being drained. Something hardened in me. New, foreign, but right. A spine I didn't know I had. I opened a new document and began recording everything. Payments, bills, unauthorized charges, dates, notes, a clean ledger of what had been taken from me under the disguise of family. When I finished compiling the record, I saved it and stared at the screen for a long moment. The numbers didn't lie, and I wouldn't either. Not anymore. My phone buzzed against the wooden floor. Grandpa's name appeared. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "We need to talk." His tone wasn't worried. It was resolved. Certain. Ready. A steadiness formed in my chest. So was I. Grandpa's house was always warm, even in the coldest Carolina mornings. But the day I arrived, the air inside felt different. Quiet, dense, charged with something that had been waiting a long time to surface. His truck was already in the driveway. The blinds were open. And when I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the dining table, pushed to the center of the room, cleared of everything except two tall stacks of papers. One was mine, the complete record I had created. The other I didn't recognize yet. He said, "Sit," gently. I did. He didn't scold, didn't soothe, didn't lace his tone with pity.
He simply opened my folder and read it in silence. And in that silence, I saw the same concentrated stillness he'd shown the night my world began to crack open. That same heavy, calculating calm that meant he was gathering every piece before deciding what to do. When he finished, he straightened the pages and said, "This isn't confusion. This is consistent misuse." The word misuse landed like a clean, undeniable verdict. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed someone else to confirm what I already knew. Hearing it from him didn't vindicate me, it steadied me. He motioned to the second stack. He said, "These are mine. Documents I've kept for years. Things your mother doesn't know I have." He didn't elaborate. Not needed to. "Elena," he continued, "your family has been treating your work as a shared resource, not your livelihood. Today, that ends." A shiver ran through me. Not fear, not dread, but something close to serenity. I had never been comfortable with confrontation. But this wasn't confrontation. This was truth stepping into the light. He said, "At 10 sharp, they'll all be here." And they were. My mother arrived first, wearing perfume too sweet and confidence too sharp. Mitchell followed, shoulders curled inward, eyes downcast like he wished he could melt into the wallpaper. Harper came in with her phone in hand, ring light reflection still in her pupils, moving like she expected this to be another brand strategy meeting. "What's this about, Dad?" Denise asked, dropping her purse onto a chair with the entitlement of someone who believed every room belonged to her. Grandpa didn't answer. He simply tapped the table. "Sit." It wasn't a suggestion. They obeyed. I sat across from them, palms flat against my knees, fingers pressing into the wood grain to keep myself grounded. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, the documents arranged neatly in front of him, like evidence in a courtroom we hadn't realized we'd been summoned to. He began without ceremony. Elena prepared a full record of funds taken from her business and personal accounts. "These are payments she covered for this family." He lifted a corner of my report. "And these are expenses charged to her without consent."
What you call helping is draining her, Harper scoffed. I never asked her to do anything she didn't want to do. The car, the promo, the supplies, they were investments, family investments. Grandpa turned his gaze to her and Harper shrank, just slightly, but enough for the room to feel it. "Tell me," he asked softly, "how many of those investments did you pay her back for?" Harper's mouth opened. No sound came out. Mitchell rubbed the back of his neck, eyes fixed on the floor. Grandpa continued, voice steady but unyielding. "Elena lost access to the car I gave her. She lost money meant for her rent, her materials, her stability. She's been carrying this family's weight alone while the three of you labeled it teamwork." Denise's face reddened. "Dad, this is inappropriate. We don't need a tribunal. This is family. We share." She never complained. "I didn't complain," I said quietly, my voice surprisingly even. "Because every time I tried to set a boundary, you called it selfish. When I said I needed the car, you told me Harper's work mattered more. When I pointed out money missing from my account, you said I was being dramatic. Every time I tried to speak, you dismissed me." Denise whipped toward me. "So this is what you're doing, turning us into villains?" I met her gaze and held it, something I'd never done before. "I didn't have to turn you into anything," I said. "I didn't rewrite anything. I recorded what happened." The silence that followed was icy and immediate. Grandpa tapped the second stack of documents. "And now," he said, "I'll make something else clear." He looked at each of them one by one. "Years ago, I set aside a fund meant to help the grandchildren build something real. I plan to divide it among you someday. But after what I've seen, after watching how Elena's work, money, and independence were treated like communal property, I've reassigned the fund." Denise stiffened. "Dad, you can't." "It goes to Elena alone," he said firmly. "It's enough for her to secure a bigger studio, expand her business, and never rely on you again." Harper's jaw fell. "You're rewarding her for attacking us?" "She's not attacking you," Grandpa said. "She's finally telling the truth." Mitchell exhaled shakily. "Maybe we can talk about a compromise." "No," I said. Quiet, steady, absolute. "There is no compromise on my livelihood." They all looked at me, really looked at me, as if I were someone they were seeing for the first time. Maybe I was. "I'm done funding this household. I'm done being your fallback plan. I'm done covering Harper's content costs and the bills that accidentally became mine. If you need help, I can bring groceries when I can afford to. But my business is mine, my income is mine, and the Subaru comes back to me today. Denise shoved her chair back so hard it screeched against the floor. You ungrateful girl, after everything we've done. Enough, Grandpa said. The room froze. You raised her to be reliable, not disposable, and you treated her reliability like an unlimited resource. No one spoke. Not one of them defended themselves. Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. What I do next, he said softly, is because I'm proud of you. He turned back to them. His decision stood. My boundaries stood. And for the first time in my life, I felt tall in a room that once made me small. The days that followed were strangely quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on a life that used to hum with tension. I signed a short lease on a bright corner studio in Raleigh, a place with big windows, warm light, and enough space for me to breathe without bumping into memories that bruised. Moving in took 3 nights, a borrowed handcart, and a stubborn determination I hadn't known I possessed until everything cracked open. Grandpa visited on the first morning. He didn't bring advice or warnings, just a thermos of tea and a small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting years for me to claim something that belonged to me. He sat on the spare stool while I aligned shelves, occasionally tapping a crooked frame with the same patient tone he used when teaching me to measure wood as a kid. Harper came by once. No cameras, no entourage. She moved slowly through the studio, touching ornaments she used to treat like props. When she chose one, a tiny hand-painted camera with a silver ribbon, she placed full payments on the counter. No discount request, no family rate, just the money. Real money. Her voice was soft when she said, "It's for a friend." For the first time, it didn't feel like a performance. Just a small, tentative moment between 2 sisters learning who they were without the roles our mother assigned. Denise didn't visit. She sent short texts every few days, sugary, polite, edged with expectation. I replied with my shop hours or a simple, "I'm busy today." Boundaries. Clear, politely enforced. It was the first time we had ever communicated on equal footing. At night, when the studio lights dimmed and the street outside softened to a quiet hum, I felt something settle inside me. Something steady. Something earned. Peace, the kind that comes only after choosing yourself. I used to think family loyalty meant saying yes until I disappeared. Now I know it means showing up with honesty, even when it costs you. Standing alone in my new studio, surrounded by the gentle glow of the life I built on my own terms, I understood something for the first time in my life. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And I finally decided who gets to walk through mine.